Airport information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 5.
Strip's where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.
Hey, and welcome to the Wager Zone. It was one hell of a week. We're fully into football. NFL started off. College football got into its second week. We were a little off on soccer. Some of us were paying a little bit of attention to European qualifying, World Cup qualifying in the South America, the African Cup of Nations qualifying, and a little Asian Cup qualifying. But nonetheless, a little bit of action there, but mostly all football.
Yeah, I was all in football this week.
I was all in football for the most part, too. I didn't end up making any bets. I tried to force something on my pick'em show on Saturday, but I couldn't really find anything, and I was a little nervous. Anything I said, we get some totally different lineup out there. But nonetheless, it was a fun week of football.
Fun.
The next week coming up, we're going to be loaded. Full slate of soccer, a lot of good soccer matchups coming up.
I actually think soccer's got a little bit of a better slate than the football this week.
I will say at least college football, we get at least a couple more. At least name teams where I'm not waiting until the last minute to get some lines and I have to text you at like 11:40.
Just not as many. There's not a Bama Texas this week or a big marquee matchup. We're starting to get more into the meat.
Yes.
Conference schedules are opening up, so less D1 versus FBS schools this week. So that helps, especially for betting purposes. But as far as just good football games, I think it's a little worse this weekend than it was last.
Yeah, probably so.
But I think there's some really good soccer.
I do think there's some good soccer. Probably the one we've been previewing for 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2-3 weeks now.
We're going to do it for a third time.
Yeah.
But let's get into our bets here. Tough week in college football for you. Nothing seemed to quite go your way. I will say the Notre Dame continues to be profitable for you. We had those up. Notre Dame might be the one team you win money on. Hit a nice Notre Dame. Hit a big Oregon, I will say, but
that was my one saving grace this week. If I didn't hit that Oregon bet and pull that out of my butt, I really would have been in the hole. So this kept me from going too far down in it.
Yeah, that Oregon got that last-minute cover. We both got the Oklahoma State one. That kept us alive.
That was all I got.
Yeah, a couple of the bad ones there. James Madison ended up winning but not covering. There was
they were lucky to even win that game.
Yeah, sort of, because it seemed every time it mattered they drove down and scored. Plus, I will say this, a lot of those college games got messed up by the stupid weather that just rode up the East Coast and caused a delay in about 20 games. Essentially, it felt like every game I bet on, I got some sort of delay, and then the delay didn't go my way. But James Madison, -5.5, didn't cover that one.
What was your team? You on that rain delay?
The Holy Cross.
Holy Cross.
Boston College.
It was delayed 9 hours.
Yeah, for one possession. My underdogs. I think I had 4 games go into overtime where I had the underdog. Lost all those. I had that Holy Cross game where Boston College was punting to them in a 1-possession game. Lightning delay. 9 hours later, randomly Holy Cross has to come out there and make a game-winning drive. If we could have just expanded that game a little more, we would have had a shot. But UT San Antonio, as much as Notre Dame has won for you, I think UT San Antonio's back-to-back weeks.
They're teasing me again this week with the spread, and I don't know if I can hop back on that.
If ever their offense is going to find a rhythm, I think it'll be that this week versus, was it Army or Navy? It was one of the military ones.
I think it's Army.
Once again, they struggled versus Texas State. Got the win. I will say that.
Texas State, I told you, they got a good coach.
Yeah. Alabama was a bad luck loser. Your favorites in Houston. Basically,
I pick against them, I lose.
whatever you do,
I pick with them, I lose.
The opposite is going to occur.
Already just told you that I'm looking at this week. They're getting 7.5 at home.
Who knows what's coming out? Win versus UT San Antonio, loss versus Rice. Who would have predicted it?
They got the win versus Rice. They just didn't cover.
Well, yes.
And it was double overtime.
Win versus Rice.
What was it, like 60-something to 60-something?
Yes.
It was absurd.
I should say non-cover versus Rice. Loss.
Lost me money.
It goes a loss in my book when I'm looking up and I'm going, Houston. Oh, they needed double overtime for Rice. Pittsburgh, I think we both loved.
Yeah.
I cowered out a little bit and only threw them in a parlay. You put a straight bet, a small straight bet on them, and they look like garbage versus Cincinnati. I will say we probably won't talk about it, but I thought Cincinnati looked pretty good. Hard to judge how good or bad Pittsburgh is, but that Cincy defense looked pretty stout. So I'm curious as they go into the Big 12 how they're going to play, because they look like one of the few ones that can really sort of D you up. So be interesting that. We did get the Oklahoma State. I mentioned that. Your three-leg parlay of Oregon, Houston, and Mississippi State. Well, that one didn't go well at all. Overall, you won $1,590. You lost $4,500. Almost $3,000 in losses. $2,909. Your new balance now $20,636 after you had sort of bounced it back up.
I got some big plays coming this week.
Yes, I know you do. My college football was a sort of a mixed bag. I mentioned my underdog plays. I'll just go over those. The Tulane I crossed off because I mentioned I wanted that quarterback to play. If the quarterback wasn't going to play, I wasn't going to take it. But we had Appy State lose in overtime. SMU, just an outright loss, though they played a pretty good game. And UAB, but my Arizona, San Diego State, and then my Holy Cross went down, and then, of course, Washington State, but I stupidly put them in the parlay with UConn. So my best read of the day, so I could extort a little extra money by putting the easy UConn in there. I should have known better because the UConn wasn't that good, but lost that one. Straight bet-wise, I was pretty good. Kansas on Friday, I really, really liked that one.
Yeah.
And then Tulane was on there but crossed off. I also lost on the James Madison. App State was a good one. Liberty was a good one. I couldn't believe they were only 10 versus New Mexico State. That seemed very strange. But and Arizona was a pretty good one, but I also had UConn in there who were awful. James Madison. My parlays did not do great. Went 0 for 4 on them. Had 2 out of 3s on that. My totals were really off this week. I should have abandoned them. I sent you the text. I don't like any of these numbers. I still found 4 in there. Ended up going 1 and 3 on those. But I did make some money on a couple of my money line parlays. I lost Alabama, Colorado. I thought once I sealed that Colorado one, I was pretty safe. I had a nice little cash out option online, and I was like, nah, don't do that. It was paying about 3/4 of what it would have paid earlier in the day, but I didn't do it. I was like, just let it ride, tried to get the money line.
Yeah.
And then Oak State Liberty 2-leg money line parlay was a 4-unit, and then Kansas James Madison also a 2-leg money line parlay. Paid $1,300 on a 4-unit play there at plus 132. Overall, I won $4,900, lost $4,750. So a solid $150 week where I gambled probably about $9,000 worth. So anytime you gamble that much and come back with $150, I don't know if it's
get some good rewards points with those numbers.
Don't feel great, but my balance is at $25,247, mostly off the week 0. I was awful in week 1. I don't know quite what I wasn't bad, but I certainly wasn't good. This week, NFL was a mixed bag for you. You hit your high unit play, so you read the board better than I did on our straight bets. I was off on my straight bets, but you're Atlanta minus 3.5, Tennessee plus 3. That was a we'll get into that. There's a lot to talk about there. this is also just what the NFL is. You have that Tennessee game, you get the cover there. You have that Jacksonville -4.5 where Indy was basically sitting on the goal line for a freebie backdoor cover.
Well, I was texting you. I was like, I'm about to lose this bet.
For some reason, they ran
went for it.
Anthony Richardson. He bangs his shoulder, gets hurt.
Well,
you have to throw in.
Well, the thing is, and I guess we'll get to it when we can talk to the game, but the Titans take the field goal in a situation where they shouldn't. And the Colts should have kicked a field goal because they could still go with the onside kick and go for the touchdown, and they go for it instead of kicking the field goal. But, hey, it saved me 2 bets.
That's correct. Miami Chargers, we both had the over on that one.
That was smooth sailing there.
We knew exactly what was going there. None of your touchdown scores hit. None of your first touchdowns hit. And you missed on your parlays, Falcons, Jags, and your boys in Seattle.
Yes,
well,
Seattle. If that Seattle script flips, I'm profitable. I'm pretty sure because I would hit that parlay and I would hit and I had the 4-unit play on them straight.
That was your difference in winning a whole lot and losing a little bit here. You lost 664 in that, so your balance goes down.
Seattle goes the other way. I'm making $1,000.
So we both got burned on that. Me on the Seattle side of things also got burned. My straight bets were awful, but when you trusted the Steelers, Seahawks, Broncos, and I was talking to you for some reason, Giants wasn't there. So I didn't even like it.
Wasn't it tied for like the largest shutout loss of all time?
Yeah, I think on opening week.
Okay,
so
opening week.
I think there were a lot of ESPN parameters there.
Yeah, sometimes they go really deep in the stats there.
And the wind was 4 miles an hour, but didn't hit a ton of my props. Only hit a couple of them. Calvin Ridley was a decent one. I bailed myself out.
Had him in fantasy.
Yeah, a little bit with Stephon Diggs. Receiving yards, I probably should have put more than the 1-unit play on Jefferson over 100. But I didn't, and it probably won't be even money for the rest of the year for that. So the one thing I did that won me money was I probably don't recommend doing so many teasers, but it seemed like the lines were a little off this week and nobody knew quite what you were expecting. So I did a lot of teasers. I hit 3 out of my 5 teasers. The one I missed, of course, had the Seahawks in there, but my favorite was the 3-leg rookie quarterback money line parlay where I had Ravens, Falcons, Jags. Right, that rookie quarterback. That paid plus 167. That was a 2-unit play. Saints, Ravens, Commanders, 7-point teaser. Falcons, Browns, Dolphins, 7-point teaser, and then my total under teaser of Niners, Panthers, and Eagles. Hit that. I won 5,300. I lost 61.24. Lost about 774 there.
Your straight bets hurt you.
Yeah. Straight bets were just awful this week. My reads, other than the Cleveland Browns, was pretty much every team that done it out this week. So 24,225 left for me on the budget on that one. No soccer to go over. So let's get into some college football. I want to talk top 4 teams here, and I'm a little. This is more what I've seen teams play. I got to watch a lot of teams this week. Play college football more than I did.
So this is like a power rankings, not
it's
necessarily
sort of a power. It's like right now.
Okay.
If you told me pick the 4 best teams in college football right now, I think Florida State has to be there. Definitely with their win over LSU. That's probably, other than Texas, the best win on the board so far by a team. I think Notre Dame, granted, you probably don't look at that NC State win, but I think playing those first 2 weeks and going to NC State and winning that game and winning it pretty easy. I guess it was a little tight there for sort of the first half. And I just think that defense-offense combination right now. I think Notre Dame's pretty tough. Texas probably has the best win on the board. What you think of the Bama team, I don't know, but they're still going to win 9 games. And going in there and winning in Alabama, that is something. And Washington, it's the only one who's sort of played a little bit of a soft schedule, but I still think beating Boise State means more than, Georgia waxing 2 teams that literally have no one, and, Michigan, whose schedule, I The only one whose schedule is as much of a joke is probably Georgia.
Yeah.
And, USC piling up points versus complete nobodies as well. Doesn't impress me that much. So this is what I've seen. I think Florida State, Notre Dame, Texas, Washington, probably the 4 best teams I've seen so far this year. You like anybody else in there that, has at least played somebody?
You mentioned the ones that I think are kind of outside that top 4 that should be right there, but it's really kind of a wait and see when they play real teams.
I want to see them.
It's the Georgia, it's the USC, it's the Ohio State, it's the Michigan. There's a good handful of teams that potentially could be right there, but they haven't really done anything.
I need at least one win of substance. I'm not grading Georgia because they can beat up on Ball State at home. So these teams at least have played a couple teams at least semi on their level. And, Washington probably the softest.
I'm interested to see what happens when
but I think
some of the marquee, there's not many, but the marquee Big Ten games, I'm interested to see, Penn State might be better than Ohio State and Michigan this year.
They're on my radar because I've liked the way they've looked.
Yeah.
And you know how hard that is for me to
I
say.
told you in preview,
but
it's still early.
I want to see them play a step up.
But from what we've seen now, you're definitely right. Florida State and Texas, I think, have the 2 most impressive wins. But Notre Dame's been consistent.
I think they've been the most consistent team out there.
You've got
defense, offense.
Yeah, they're well rounded. They play smart, I think, for the most part. And then Washington, just puts up a ton of points.
I think watching what I watched Central Florida and how they struggled to score versus Boise.
I thought that was going to be – I thought Boise was –
I watched that Washington-Boise game, and Washington threw up 60 on them running like they weren't even there. So that's what moved them up and not grabbing one of those sort of teams that hasn't played anybody but you think are good. So I want to talk a little bit about this Texas-Alabama game because I don't have it in my list. I have it in my rankings. What'd you make of it? I just think Texas was the better team watching it. I turned it off after 3 quarters.
It was quite a boring game.
Because I was like, Texas is the better team here. And there was nothing really. Maybe. I'm not going to write Bama off. I love how everybody, Bama's done. They aren't winning anything. They lose to a
They could still win the SEC. And you win the SEC, you're in the playoff.
When Bama loses to, Mississippi State or something that is a 6-win team, then I'll start to write Bama off. Losing to probably a top 16, one of your teams who you thought would be in the playoff and challenging for a national championship does not alter my thing.
I was really interested to see that, Bama's offense was just dead. We've gotten used to the past few years of seeing pretty much a high-flying, explosive offense in Bama. People think old school Bama run the ball when actually the past 5 or 6 years they've been a really pass-heavy offense with stud wide receivers and quarterbacks, and it just looked like they were lacking those elite players. Maybe some of their recruiting edge has been a little bit spread out to these other teams, the Texases and the Georgias. NIL may have an impact on that.
Yeah, and, I think they did want to shift and probably judging from more to a ground and pound attack, which is probably what they're suited to. The problem was their defense didn't come with them this week. I think we'll get into it a little bit with A&M, and sometimes, they spit probably the last 10 years, perfect on hitting with the recruits, and, sometimes recruits don't hit, and I think some of those defensive guys who we think are going to be elite guys just haven't turned into elite guys. I mean, I don't think you could say the same thing on offense because basically the last 20 receivers they have are your 15 best receivers in the league. They have 3 quarterbacks from the last 3 years who are starting NFL games. So, I think that's just sometimes, they've been 5 for 5 in quarterbacks and a list of receivers, so maybe it's just a little miss there, but I think the defense is what they thought they'd be sort of back to and able to control games and they weren't able to get any pressure on the quarterback in this game. Texas's receivers, I will say, are ridiculously good at getting down the field, and if Quinn can get them the ball, they're going to be open, streaking down the field. I I don't say it often, but Texas has a lot of talent now. If you can trust Steve to run the slate here, it'll be interesting. So should be interesting to watch Texas the rest of the year because I was very, very impressed with their talent. It wasn't just talk. A lot of those guys look like legit dudes who will be playing on Sunday. Want to touch on Notre Dame a little bit. I mentioned I thought that was a really, really nice win to just go into NC State and be like, we're the better football team. What'd you make of that win?
It was a really slow start. Then they had a weather delay. And then Notre Dame came out, scored like an 80-yard touchdown on the first play after the weather delay, and that was pretty much the difference in the game, and they just kind of put it away. I worry a little bit about their consistency on offense. Yeah. I think their defense is solid. They have probably the best offensive line in the country. Yeah. They can run the ball. But it seemed like I think they had like the first, NC State wasn't much better, but I think the first 7 or 8 total possessions between both teams were like 3 and outs.
It was slow.
It took almost to the end of the first quarter before a team got a first down. But then Notre Dame, once they took control of that game, they just buried them.
Well, I think that's why I sort of liked them because you saw that. Their defense kept them in when their offense wasn't flowing, and I think when you have somebody like Hartman, once he found that rhythm, they were able to run the ball, play action was hidden. I don't think their receivers are great, but I think that mix, once they find their flow, they're hard to stop, and their defense can keep them in most games.
And Hartman can hit guys if they're open. I mean, if he's getting protection, he can put it on a dime. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious if they can run the table here. I've just liked what I've seen from Notre Dame. Let's get into a couple of the other games. There weren't a ton. I want to talk a little bit about that Illinois-Kansas game.
You were all over this one.
I'm really, really impressed with Kansas. That football, if Daniels can stay healthy, they were able to just dominate on both sides of the ball. Defense, it looks like a Lance Leopold full team here. Defense, offense, they can hit explosive plays, but they can also control the clock. They just dominated Illinois and took them out. Now, what you think of Illinois, but if you told me Kansas was moving to the Big Ten, I'd say they could win that Big Ten West side of things. I'm a little curious if they can be I think they can be the contender here in the Big 12. I'm just interested to see what they do when they step up and play the big boys.
It is Illinois.
Yes.
So just pump the brakes a little bit there because, while we were big on Illinois in our preview, they haven't shown us anything this year, and they might just be bad.
Yeah. Granted, they did beat a Toledo team who scored 70-plus points the week before, but it was for Texas Southern, so we'll balance that out a little bit. They look impressive defensively, which was their problem last year. Offensively, I think you're going to be able to get points. The other thing is Daniels has to play. To be elite and maybe reach that 10 win mark, Daniels has to play. The other guy is good. He's probably played as many games as Daniels has. He just doesn't have that extra sort of niche. It becomes probably a 7, 8, 6-win team if that other guy is playing. I think if Daniels stays healthy, this team could creep into the 9-10 win mark. We'll see what the other Big 12 teams look like, but I haven't been overly impressed with Baylor or Texas Tech. Kansas State looked pretty good. I thought, they look like Kansas State with a little bit more of a passing game. I thought Will Howard looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's move on from this one. I think this was probably the biggest disappointment of the week. Ole Miss Tulane, it still was a good game, but I wanted to see that quarterback.
And that was disappointing having him ruled out before the game. I was kind of bummed because I thought this was going to be quite the showdown. It turned out to be pretty good.
The score did not indicate what the game was because Ole Miss got that cheap, defensive touchdown as Tulane was driving down.
I think Tulane has their starting quarterback. They're very capable of winning this game.
Yeah. The way passes were open, and what I think of that, I honestly think that Tulane kid's probably the second best, at least legit quarterback who can go play NFL Sundays out there. Caleb Williams is probably up here. There are a couple guys I'm looking at, and I think that guy's right up there. There's not much to talk about. Just disappointing because I think we were both hyped to watch this game, watch Tulane get a shot versus Ole Miss, and then the way the game turned out, you're like, man, if they had that guy, this could have been something. So disappointing there. Ole Miss ends up with I think a decent win, and half the people won't even remember that the quarterback didn't play, and it'll probably look even better 6 weeks.
Well, it's like
from now.
when they scheduled that non-conference game, was Tulane even any good?
No, they were. I
don't think Ole Miss knew when they were going on the road to Tulane in week 2 that it was going to be a tough matchup.
Well, I think there was talks of Fritz getting canned because he had those 2 down years. He's still won 6-7 games, but Texas, Miami. This was an interesting one. Miami tried hard early to give it away, but I think the better team just went out there. I think you saw a lot of sort of what people thought of Van Dyke last year coming into Miami. Yeah. He's one of those he made ridiculous throws. And, speaking of team who does a lot of recruiting and has a lot of fancy players, offense didn't, I think, look great. I mean, their scores came off Miami's stupidness, and the defense.
The defense was awful.
Which has all these loaded guys, but don't seem to do anything. Just got shredded by that Miami team once Miami hit its stride.
Yeah, I wonder how small that buyout's getting because a lot of these issues you see with Texas A&M seem to be coaching and putting players in the right positions because they have the talent there. They have the fan base, they have the stadium, they have the facilities. What's the missing piece here? Because if they wanted to make the next step and get back to where Texas A&M needs to be, this was the game they needed to win. I think, kudos to Miami. It still doesn't quite show me enough yet.
No.
Because A&M may just be bad again.
And Miami did that dumb things early. They were able to overcome it, but they had the turnover early, and then the stupid dropped punt when, on the 5-yard line when A&M couldn't move the ball at all and just give them free touchdowns.
So I think you learn a little bit more about A&M from this one than you do Miami.
Yeah.
Just because I think A&M may just be what they've been the last 3 years, and the patience is going to run out on Fisher very soon. I
am curious to see what we get from Miami. I still didn't love the defense, but offensively, if Van Dyke can stay like that, you have a pro-level quarterback.
Well, and the ACC's pretty weak.
Yeah. I sent you the text earlier about Clemson when they were struggling with Charleston Southern. Do we make a bet if they can even win the Big South Conference? So we'll see what sort of goes on with Miami if they can keep growing there. They're one of those teams, as more wins flow, the stadium gets a little bit more and more
They might actually have
up.
people there.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if they had a stadium, on campus.
Well, yeah, I think that land costs a lot of money. So, anyway, UCF Boise State was, anytime Central Florida can go in there and you win at Boise, it's something to be said.
I was expecting a bigger difference in talent here, especially. This game actually makes me think higher of Washington.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Because I was expecting UCF to come in and blow out Boise because, Washington handled Boise.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, Boise's bad. But this one was a bit of a fight.
Yeah, Boise State's defense looked much, much better in this one. Offense is still a struggle. That quarterback is good, but really, really raw. It's
just bad mistakes and bad time.
It's sort of the reason why maybe they didn't use him last year is there's a lot there to work with, but it's not there yet, and that offense gets stalled behind. Kicking problems continue to be a Boise State thing, but big win for Central Florida here as they sort of creep closer to their sort of Big 12 season and see if they can be contenders in there. But that's a huge road win, even if it's probably not the best Boise State team we've seen. You go in there and win. That's a big deal. All right. We want to look ahead to this week's games. I know you've already sent me a couple. A couple caught my eye this week. We sort of get the first half taste of Penn State here. We mentioned we've liked the way they've looked, but they haven't really played anybody. Go to Illinois here. not a great sort of Illinois team, I think, but certainly one that if Penn State's offense isn't scoring, which has been their problem, we get the typical Big Ten game of.
I don't think that's been their problem this year, though.
No, they've been able to pass.
I think that's the difference.
And that's what I'm asking. Can they go in there and pass the ball and continue to dominate here versus Illinois?
If I had to lean on this spread, it'd be taking Penn State to cover the 14.5. I think this is going to be a big win, especially what we've seen from Illinois, just crappy.
Yeah.
But like you said, the classic Big Ten grueling matchup could rear its ugly head.
Yeah, I think we'll get a better feel of what Illinois actually is if they can.
They got this one at home,
at least hang around in
but
this one.
They had Toledo at home.
Yes, and
barely got that one.
Yeah, but that might just be Illinois style. That was their style last year too. Just close and gross, but at least a step up in competition here for Penn State. LSU, Mississippi State. I wouldn't say overly impressed with Mississippi State over the weekend, but enough to sort of get it done. I think that speaks more to Arizona. I told you I really liked the way Arizona looked. Went in there, played a good game. Mississippi State played a solid game. LSU comes in there. Get our second look at LSU playing another competent team here. First go around, Florida State might be more than a competent team. So this is probably a must win here for LSU. These are the games they sort of took a hold of last year and sort of how they snuck their way into the win in the SEC. What do you make of this LSU?
I've got a little bit of lean here, and I think it's going to be one of my plays this week. I was just looking at some stats, and I saw a couple other guys' podcasts, and they were talking about this. While LSU did dominate Grambling last week, they gave up over 200 yards rushing to Grambling. And guess what Mississippi State did a lot against Arizona? They really tried to emphasize the run game, which is different, which is weird because, Will Rogers has been throwing the ball like crazy at Mississippi State. And he didn't have hardly very many pass attempts. They're running the ball. So I think they might be able to find some success rushing the ball against LSU, keep this a low-scoring game. I think LSU gets the win, but I really like the points here.
Yeah.
Getting 10 at home.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we still got a little bit of LSU. I think they can make the step. I'd probably stay away from this game. You know how I feel about taking, large road favorites. So, and I didn't quite get a great feel of Miss State. I watched that game coming away more like Arizona can't hang with these teams. As long as they're giving them plus, I'll probably be more ride Arizona than I will be sort of. I just don't have a feel what Miss State is. I might not have a feel all year.
It's also an early game. I think it's a noon kickoff.
It is. Next up, I marked this one down because I'm interested because I watched all that Wisconsin-Washington State games doing in my seat. I did have the spread, which I wasn't worried about, but I was like, why did you try to get a little extra boost
with Alabama
on the freaking parlay when all you had to do was just put some extra money on the stupid Washington State? Wisconsin looked exactly like what Wisconsin looked like last year going into Washington State. Granted, Georgia Southern has not played elite competition. They've scheduled some dogs, but I do think they can play football a little bit here. 19 seemed like a lot for a team that I just thought was garbage versus Washington State. Weren't all that impressive the week before versus Utah State, I believe they played.
Yeah.
They didn't cover that one. I think Georgia Southern could go in there and give them a little bit of a game. I was shocked this line was at 19.
Yeah, I'm not sold on this one. This will be a stay away from me. I just, despite Wisconsin playing badly, the talent gap here between these two teams is massive. And going into Wisconsin, yes, it's a big spread, probably too big for me to even think about considering Wisconsin, but I'm not certain Georgia Southern can cover that either. So I think this is a stay away.
The thing that makes Georgia Southern's going to try to run the ball and control game. Wisconsin looked like they had no passing game. Defense looked okay, but Washington State bullied them. I just wonder, one, if the Wisconsin fans start to turn on this team. If it's I think it'll be a low-scoring game similar to the Utah State game where Wisconsin might be able to get out to 20, and it's 2016, 2015, 2010. But if this thing sits around 10-10 at like halftime, Georgia Southern's like, oh, we have a chance here. Yeah. Things start to change. I think the Wisconsin fans start to turn and start questioning why are we now losing to Georgia Southern after that bad game versus Washington State. I just have my eye on it. I don't know if it can happen because I don't quite know, Georgia Southern's level yet because they've played sort of weak competition. I just have not liked what I've seen from Wisconsin for 2 weeks in a row here. I should have been more aggressive on that Washington State one. I knew it. I think that was one of the few. Yeah. I told you early. I had my eye on this one, and then I didn't follow through because I got greedy and was trying to pair it with something. Another one I have my eye on. I don't think they will lose 2 games at home, but this one's a little interesting here. North Dakota versus Boise State. North Dakota's a subdivision team, but these Dakotas and grassland plain type teams have had a large rivalry for a very long time. A lot of them played in the lower tiers against each other. They're all very good football teams. Boise State's the one who continued to accelerate their program and want to move up. I mean, I think we both know North Dakota State, if they wanted to make that jump to Division, 1, they could easily make that jump. But I worry a little bit. North Dakota marks this game down, takes it pretty serious. They're a solid football team. I don't know if they can go into Boise State, but I'm wondering if Boise State's, they don't start 0-2 a whole lot and don't start 0-2 with a loss at home a whole lot. If they're a little down and this game gets close, what happens there a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they can lose twice at home.
I'm curious what this number is going to be now. It'll be one of those.
We'll find out a few hours before kickoff.
That's going to be an 11:55 text, I'm sure, to you, if you have money left. But I'm interested here because I think North Dakota,
talk about a downward spiral if Boise loses this one.
It just seems like a weird run for them to schedule. They've sort of avoided scheduling, a lot of those other teams in and around their area that, they certainly didn't schedule North Dakota State, but they don't schedule South Dakota. Yep. They don't schedule Idaho a lot. Not that one would not be that much of a worry. But it's an eye on. Another one I had my eye on, mostly just because the spread caught me off guard a little bit here because, we talked about it. Georgia's 27.5-point favorites here versus South Carolina. I know South Carolina didn't look good for North Carolina, but 30-point spread in a conference game like this?
This is not last year's Georgia. Yeah. They lost a lot of talent off of this team, and I'm curious to see how they do, especially on the defensive side of things. Yeah. They've lost some dominant players. We saw how good dude on the Eagles looked this past Sunday. They had NFL guys on that team last year. They're not there on that defense, and if they don't get pressured on Rattler, every now and then he pops out some good game, and we talked about how we think Georgia may not fall apart, but slip up a little bit this year and not remain perfect. Almost 28 points. Yeah. That's a lot.
I don't think I was. Because South Carolina, I didn't think played good versus North Carolina. I was just as stunned at the spread with it. If you move this spread to even 21, I'd probably be like, yeah, okay. But, we're talking 4 touchdowns here. What have we seen from Georgia? We know nothing about this Georgia team, and this Georgia team does not have the same people that it's had the last 2 years. It's going off name. So I don't know if I'm going to pull the trigger. This one's probably one of those I have to think about because the other thing I hate is sitting there watching this South Carolina team look like crap and have to do crazy stuff.
They do have a nut job for a coach.
So interesting, I will say. And another one that's the spread caught me a little bit. I know San Diego State didn't look great versus UCLA, but 24.5 San Diego State, Oregon State. I know they're going there, but
It's a lot of respect for Oregon State.
The only thing I could think of was 2 weeks in a row they're tired of losing money on Oregon State, because that just seemed big.
Yeah. 3.5 touchdowns is a lot.
I don't know if San Diego State, it wouldn't be one I pick upset. This was just more when I looked at the spread and was like, wow, Vegas starting to respect Oregon State a little bit here and might think of them a little bit more than maybe some other people slot. We were big on them, but I think they think Oregon State's maybe the second best team in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean,
judging from the spread, because the UCLA spread was,
I think it was like 14,
yeah,
15.
it was 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Maybe, road environment. UCLA doesn't really pack their stadium out very much.
Yes.
Oregon State does.
I think I'd maybe understand it if it was later in
a little bit
winter.
further north, it's a longer travel time. But I don't know, 24.5, that's a lot of respect for Oregon State for a team that usually doesn't get the respect.
Yeah, it's interesting, I thought. Next up, I think this
one confused me.
Yeah, it's a good battle, I will say that. Minnesota, North Carolina. North Carolina's 7.5-point favorites in this one.
Did you watch that Minnesota-Nebraska game week 1?
Yeah, I think they, who does read North Carolina well other than I? When they play Appy State, it's going to be a close game. It probably depends what you think of Appy State. I think we both think Appy State is a good football team. I think we both thought Appy State, especially coming off that win of North Carolina, South Carolina, that North Carolina was going to be a little bit down. Minnesota, I don't even know what to refer to the Nebraska win as other than they've won the football game.
Yeah.
Both sides looked awful, and Nebraska somehow looked even worse over the weekend. They beat Eastern Michigan, but once again, I would not call it a football dominating performance. It was a team that had better players than the other team.
I just look at this matchup, and I just don't know how. Even if North Carolina doesn't play their best game, I don't know how Minnesota can match the points North Carolina is going to be able to put on the board. Even if it's, 28 points, I don't know if Minnesota can get, 14.
Well, that's I
don't understand. I like North Carolina probably, like I said, up to 2 touchdowns here. Yeah. So they're going to be one of my plays for sure.
I think North Carolina is the better team here.
They are the hosts.
And the other thing is I think they're better tested.
I believe.
2 weeks in a row.
It is in Chapel Hill,
Yes. 2 weeks in a row they've played South Carolina and Appalachian
State.
So
they're ready for tough games. This is probably the weakest of the 3 teams they've played.
I think Minnesota thought it was going to play a tough game versus Nebraska, which it was a tough game, but
it looked like a high school football game.
They let Jeff Sims do some things, and only towards the end did he start turning the ball over numerous times a game. So interesting one there. Another one I'm interested here. Rutgers, 2 weeks in a row, played, winning football. I'll call it winning football here. Virginia Tech, this program is dying quickly here. Lost at home versus Purdue. I thought for sure they just still have at least a little enough home field advantage to be able to beat Purdue at home. They were not. Purdue thoroughly outplayed them. Rutgers, it keeps creeping up their line. They're getting a little more respect. I told you I thought they could get to like 6 wins here if they started.
You said it was year 3 for Schiano the first time he was at Rutgers. It's year 3 this time around, I think, isn't it?
I thought he could get to 6. They had to start 3-0.
Yeah.
They got the first 2 pretty easy. I'm curious your thoughts here. You think this is?
I just don't. I don't know what the morale is of Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
They've got to be just completely just.
Well,
what are they playing
sunk
for?
If they go into Rutgers and lose.
Rutgers has nothing to lose in this game. They're happy. They're playing well, and Virginia Tech's just trying to stay alive. And I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I will say Rutgers' offense has looked almost functional the last 2 weeks. It's not going to score with the elite, but it's a functional, simplistic offense that can run the ball, can throw play-action passes, and then they beat you up on the defensive side of the ball. So if you aren't capable of scoring points, which Virginia Tech was not capable of scoring points on Purdue, I think Rutgers starts 3-0, and maybe they can hit that 6-win mark. We'll see. This one was interesting because it's a team you like, and I think it's a team that can play good football. Hard to judge because Ohio State hasn't looked great, but they haven't needed to look great. The offense looks like they're trying different things. They've been yo-yoing quarterbacks. Now, I think they said they've picked a starter, and that's what they're going to do. I think it's the kids that started the 2 games, not the other one who's been coming in. 28 for Ohio State versus Western Kentucky here. Any chance Western Kentucky can just get this into a shootout and light it up?
I think so. I think Ohio State lacks the physicality that they've had.
Well, that's
in
what I
years
was
past.
curious.
And I don't know if they're going to be able to disrupt Western Kentucky's offense. And I think Western Kentucky gets some points on the board. The other number I was looking at was on the over on this. I think it was low 60s. I think Ohio State, don't get me wrong, Ohio State's going to win this game. Unless something really crazy happens, I don't see Western Kentucky going into Columbus and getting this upset. But they can put points up on the board. They got a good offensive mind at coach, pretty good offense, and I could see this being a 40 to 20 something game. But 28's a little large. This is another one I would put probably around 21.
Yeah, the way I could see it going is, how Ohio State's lost its game where their defense just collapsed, and it does become that shootout where the teams are just trading. If they could get some stuff, if Western Kentucky's offense can't, get some open plays, Ohio State lives off defensive pass rush. If they aren't getting that, then I think this could be a little bit of a game. Otherwise, it's probably going to be a shootout, but another one of those, I thought the spread was a little bit bloated and a little, maybe people don't know that Western Kentucky can put points on the board here. Now, whether they can stop Ohio State, I don't know. But Ohio State hasn't been scoring versus worse teams than Western Kentucky. So that's a little concerning, but you don't know how much they sort of just start trying things because they haven't really needed to score so far. Next one, you want to call it one of the biggest games of the week?
Yeah, it is for us, or me anyway.
In the 90s, it was one of the biggest games. Tennessee's sort of at least replenished some talent, but it's certainly not the talent these 2 teams had in the 90s. I will say that. Tennessee, Florida. Tennessee's going there 6.5-point favorites. I think everybody's a little nervous off the Austin Peay game, but I think everybody sort of doesn't know what to expect here, because I don't think anyone knows quite what Florida is. You got the Utah game, didn't look great, but they kept it semi-close. You mark off the McNeese State game, which is probably Florida did what we thought we were going to do to Austin Peay.
Yep.
You don't know what to make of that game. It's just, I think it's a weird game that nobody quite knows what to make here.
I'm nervous, one, simply because Tennessee never has success in the swamp. We've won twice there, like in the last 50 years. Each one with about 20-something years apart. So never finding much success in the swamp. Some positives, Tennessee. I think the offense has been very vanilla. I think they've been hesitant to show anything. Both of the teams they've played the last 2 weeks, they could have beaten by just running the ball every single play. But in those regards, some of the plays that they did call, Milton was missing throws. I'm concerned about that. And Florida's, don't get me wrong, there's talent on that team. I don't know why, people think Florida's going to be absolutely terrible. It was a pretty good Utah team they lost to.
In Utah.
I think the thing is, and Florida has a little bit of an edge here because they're the home team. They're going to have to dictate the pace of this game, and they're going to have to make it ugly. Force Tennessee into 3rd and longs. I think if this gets into a shootout, it's to Tennessee's advantage, just because we're the probably more talented offensive team. But Tennessee tends to shoot themselves in the foot and get into 3rd and long in a matter of seconds. And if Milton's not going to be that consistent passer, they're not going to be able to convert those. And if Florida, they didn't have very many rushing yards, and that's probably what lost them the game against Utah. Utah just stuffed them on defense. But they got a lot of rushing yards against McNeese State. It is McNeese State. But if they can get somewhere in between those two rushing yards and get over 150 yards rushing, Florida might be able to control this game.
Well, that's what I don't think we know what Tennessee's defense is.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it drives me nuts to hear how much improved the defense is when you're playing
Virginia and Austin
two
Peay.
teams who have no offense. And quite honestly, Austin Peay sort of moved the ball half okay.
Better than Virginia.
And I think the offensive questions come, how much does it have to be sort of vanilla because of the quarterback? The offense has looked similar to what it looked like when Joe Milton has played quarterback for Tennessee in the past. There are plays, and then there are plays that are missed, and that was the whole reason Hooker took over, because those plays didn't get missed. And with an offense that plays so fast and will have times where they go 3 and out, you can't miss those explosive plays because you're going to give the ball right back up if those explosive plays are missed. That's when Florida can control the clock, especially if the defense can't control the run. We saw that Austin Peay quarterback run on us half successfully, especially for what that Austin Peay offensive line is. This was an Austin Peay team who basically did nothing the week before versus Southern Illinois. And I don't think they were playing vanilla versus Southern Illinois to prep for the Tennessee game. So little concerning there, but I think we'll know more about each team after this week and see what they are. Another one where I think sort of a litmus test. Yeah. Probably two not.
They've kind of been under the radar this year so far.
Upper crust, but I think we'll find out where BYU, where Arkansas sort of sit in that lay of teams between 8 and 32 here.
Yeah, and these are both teams looking to move towards the top tier of their conference, looking to make that jump. BYU new to the Big 12. Yeah. And Arkansas seeing that both at Bama and LSU have a loss now out of conference, but still, do they smell blood in the water? Do they think, hey, the West may be looking for a new division winner? It's our time. They still got Jefferson if he can stay healthy, so we'll see what happens.
This is another one where I don't have a good feel. I don't quite know what Arkansas is. We watched BYU play Sam Houston, who's just moving to out of the subdivision, but it's always been a pretty good football program. Yeah. They couldn't move the ball at all on BYU, and then the next week it was a Southern Utah team. Now, granted, that Southern Utah team went and played Arizona State to a 1-point game, but and Arkansas has basically played nobody, so it's just hard to gauge what these are. Arkansas 8, that seems a pretty fair line. Yeah, I might have reduced it a little bit, but you're getting that extra tax for the home game here.
Yeah, I think home team, that's 3 to 4 points. Yeah. Straight up, I think they're, it should be 3 to 4 points. Yeah. So add those together, that gets you around 8.
Yeah, I think so. Let's move to this one. Speaking of no idea.
You need to talk me out of this. I saw this, Houston at home, getting plus 7.5. After they burned me when I took UTSA at Houston, I'm tempted to take Houston again this week. And TCU may be terrible.
Yes, but I don't think there's a way to judge.
But defense, Houston gave up 60 points to Rice.
That's my concern.
I'll be with a little bit of extra time there.
TCU's defense, I will say, looked better last week. Granted, that was for someone incapable of moving the ball forward. The one thing I can say in this game, I know TCU will score points.
Yeah.
That is about the only thing. I don't know if they can stop Houston, but Houston tends to do things like stop themselves, which is why they painted themselves in a deep, deep hole versus Rice. Now, granted, my play of just whatever Houston does in the first half, play the live and go the opposite.
Hit yet again.
Probably is the way to go. But I think we'll know more about TCU here.
Yeah.
If they can sort of rewrite the ship, get back on track, probably put them back at least into a competent football team. But if they struggle defensively again, I think we probably have to write off TCU as at least a Big 12 contender for the year. this year.
Yeah, I mean, they've already got that one ugly loss, and if you go into Houston, who has proven to be inconsistent at best, and lose that one, that's going to be a tough.
They will have capable players. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whether it's managed right and channeled properly, there's no telling.
I have to talk myself out of taking this one. I've been eyeballing it, but I'll jump off and Houston will win by 30.
They will get the best Houston performance in 20 years.
I'll just have to be okay with it.
All right. Is this a conference game this year? Is Houston in there yet? No, they aren't, are they?
Yeah.
No, they're back. They're at Big 12, so we're...
Yeah, it's a conference game.
It's a conference game.
Yeah, because BYU and Houston both joined this year.
Yeah. All right. Old school Southwest Conference days in effect here. TCU and Houston. Last one. I don't know if this was going to be a huge matchup, but it was probably Washington's first, at least half legitimate test. But,
a little bit of a cloud over this game now.
But Michigan State, if the Mel Tucker contract wasn't bad before, looks worse and worse.
I think it's one of those, a lot of people have been jumping to conclusions on this. I think we need to wait.
Yeah.
Because, we've only heard one side of the story. We need to wait on the investigation and stuff. I hate to try to judge people before we know all the details, but it's ugly nonetheless.
Yes. He probably should not have been making phone calls that he was making,
after midnight.
Yes. Whether it was forced or unforced, that'll come out.
You can't put yourself in those situations.
That's exactly right. That's why you get...
Whether she's making false accusations or not, as a responsible adult male, you have to avoid situations that could portray you in a bad light like this.
You're given the...
And he may very well be guilty of all these accusations. I don't want to, we've only heard her side of the story at this point, and, the Michigan State's playing it safe. They're suspending him now, and then they're going to find everything out, and we'll see what happens. But it's going to be hard to rally the troops now.
Michigan State, also a school that isn't exactly the cloud of institution here of handling these things well. But, like you said, no judgment yet other than probably make better decisions. That's why they give you a 10-year deal with millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Make better decisions. Any chance Michigan State has of... it was slim before. I haven't granted they've won big both weeks, but I haven't liked the way they've looked.
I think this is a chance for Washington to really put themselves on the radar, and they might take advantage.
Yeah,
this could get ugly.
Is big, but
it's in Washington, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to get that Michigan State team ready to go without their coach on that big of a road trip.
Yeah, it was a long shot last week before this stuff dropped. Now with this stuff dropping, I don't think Michigan State is scoring.
Washington team total over.
Yeah, I think that would be something to look at. But I just don't think Michigan State, even before this, was capable of scoring with Washington. And now with this,
I think they had a fluke year, the year that they thought Mel Tucker was an amazing coach, and then they're like, "Oh, lifetime deal."
Well, they did the stupid thing when supposedly SEC schools started sniffing around him, especially LSU. They felt the need to throw a 10-year deal on a football coach who was
completely unproven.
I'd call semi-successful at Colorado and one okay year at Michigan State. If you watched any of those games from when he won, what did he win, 9 or 10 games? It wasn't exactly like they were playing dominant football with legit dudes who were great. So just a little jumping the gun and giving any coach a 10-year deal. There possibly is 2 football coaches in the world I would be giving 10-year deals to. And one who wins 9 games or 10 games with Michigan State is not one of them. But nonetheless, anything else in college?
No, like I said, I think it's actually kind of a light week this year as in terms of marquee matchups. I think we've got a lot of interesting, could be good games, but probably none that should be impacting the playoff picture, and unless we see a crazy upset happen.
Yeah, it's been a weird 3 weeks here for college football.
Yeah, it seems like this year is going to be very much a wild card year. I'm looking forward to maybe seeing a different lineup in the playoffs this year. I think it could be good for college football to see some different teams there.
Yeah, and
Clemson's out.
yeah, well, I can say that they beat Florida State and don't lose another game. All right, I think that closes up. It just seems like there hasn't been a great mark. I know they were pumping that Texas-Bama game. That was a little bit of a dud. I think they thought they'd get something great out of Tulane and Ole Miss, and the game was good. It didn't have the NFL quarterback on the other side, and we got Jackson Dart, who's interesting on the Ole Miss side, but it just doesn't seem we've had the marquee college games early that we've gotten the last handful of years. So we'll see what this week's like, and see if we get any good games this week. Let's move to the NFL.
All right.
Fun NFL week.
Week one's always strange.
Yeah, it's just you think
I went into it all optimistic. I got great winners. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you think you know the NFL. You don't know the NFL. No one knows the NFL.
That's why the sports books love it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think the underdogs went something like 8-7, but I know the home dogs, because I had the parlay with it, went something like 2-6. So who knows? Couple thoughts from opening week. Who you're impressed with? Who you weren't impressed with? I think everybody has to be impressed with the Niners, but it's sort of a mix and match thing.
I'm surprised to see Purdy still be as good as he is.
I think that was my big takeaway in that game. Not so much that the Niners could rip, but I mean Purdy was an efficient beast. Ball where it needed to be, when it needed to be, and it's just one of those things where you watched him in college, and he was a good college quarterback. Those Iowa State teams were good college football teams, but they were never great college football teams. He was never great college football quarterback. And then you see this, and you're like, is this guy one of the top 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL? With as efficient as he is throwing the ball and getting it to the right place? I think that was really good.
One team that really impressed me, and I know it was the biggest margin of difference, but I thought the Cowboys looked great. I know Giants equals bad, but the Cowboys just had their foot on the throat defensively the entire game. Maybe the best defense in National Football League.
I think that was, and I will say the rookie quarterbacks, we'll get into it, but I thought Anthony Richardson looked pretty good and comfortable, which of the three, I thought he looked the most.
The one I watched the most of was Bryce Young at Carolina, and he had a couple of bad turnovers. They were very similar to interceptions where he didn't see the safety sitting over the middle and it just got picked off. But he led one drive down the field, and he looked really good. He had a moment where he was hitting his checkdowns, hitting his reads, and I think he could grow into a really good player at Carolina.
Yeah.
Maybe not this year, but I think if he gets a lot of good experience, he's going to develop.
Yeah. I watched that game on Monday or Tuesday. I watched it, the quick version on my NFL Plus, and that offense just isn't very good.
Yeah.
And I was even hearing, listened to a couple podcasts, and they were like, "Oh, he looked bad," and I'm like, "Well, what do you want?"
Well, I mean, I texted you. It was right after that drive.
I didn't think he looked bad. Some bad turnovers, but what do you expect from a rookie quarterback with a weak wide receiver team? Not a great offensive
Well, honestly,
line.
their defense was terrible.
And so...
I mean, Atlanta ran the ball down their throat the whole game.
Yeah.
But, like I said, he had some shining moments that were impressive. Yeah, they're not going to be a great team this year, but he showed the potential that he could be a starting quarterback in the NFL. That's my opinion.
I did not watch it and think, oh, this guy's terrible. No, I did watch it and I was like, wow, this guy's really, really small.
The one I was least impressed with was Stroud at Houston.
Yeah.
He also probably got dealt the hardest card out of all the rookie quarterbacks.
And their game plan seemed to be just check it down. It's like one look. If the receiver's wide open, throw it. If not, check it down. So, I mean, hard to judge. Plus, I think that was probably the toughest game it's just, didn't see much from there. I will say I was impressed with Richardson. That one, now, I mean, we knew he could make throws.
Yeah.
I mean, we both watched
That
him.
game was very competitive.
Yeah. We watched him in college and was like, this guy's got something. It's just that one needed to be molded. And it looked more competent than I think I thought coming in early.
That's definitely a team I think a year or two from now, if they get some more weapons around him, could be pretty good.
I might not head first run him quite as much. Protect that body for a little bit.
Yeah, you might want to keep him in the field of play for more than half the season.
Yeah, the first touchdown run I didn't mind. It was that. Now I think some of that was him. He saw it and tucked it. But that one at the end where they're just trying to get a garbage miracle comeback, maybe don't have him take that shot.
Yeah.
Now he's a big dude. It's not, like Bryce Young, who does look very small out there.
Yeah.
But I was impressed with Richardson, and the Colts team looked better than I thought they would. At least offensively. They hung with that Jags team for a little bit. Now, whether he can do that every week, probably a question. But I will say, of the rookies, I was most impressed with Richardson. I was like, wow, it makes you just think if he had stayed in Florida one more year, it would have been interesting. Let's talk the Thursday game, Chiefs-Lions, because it was probably the best matchup of two of the, I'd say, top teams.
Yeah.
I don't want to go Mike Tirico and say full asterisk here, but,
Gosh.
It's an NFL game. We're going to have it all year long where guys are going to be.
I mean, there's going to be injuries. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
You can't say needs to be an asterisk when a player's out. But you are starting to see, the Chiefs, they've been playing a thin line. They've been riding the last 3 years where they get talented receivers. We've got Mahomes. We'll replace you with somebody else. But they've always had guys like they had the Mecole Hardman.
Yeah.
They had some of these other guys behind that were adequate and serviceable. I think they've dug themselves a little too deep at receiver talent, and they don't quite have the guys, and they really miss Kelsey in this game.
I think they can't win without Kelsey, whereas I think a couple years ago when they had Hill and Watkins and stuff like that, Kelsey was the epitome of the offense, but they could lose him for a game or two.
I think if any big time receivers hit the market before trade deadline's up.
Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Who I thought looked really good. He's just a good
Mike
receiver.
Evans. I think
who also looked really good.
I think the Chiefs may be in the market for somebody.
Yeah.
Especially if Kelsey's health is going to be a question throughout the year.
The Hopkins signing would have been nice because, we'll get to that team's quarterback play here in a second. But Lions defensively, I thought looked improved. Offense was a little shaky. It found its points here and there, but I mean, I think we expect, especially when the Lions are at home in the Dome, this offense will get Tom. And
I've been really impressed with Goff. Mainly just ball control. He's setting records on passes without an interception right now.
Chiefs, I don't get. I worry about the receivers more in the playoffs. I think they'll win their.
Well, their division's pretty winnable.
Yeah, I think we watched the Broncos and Raiders, and we're not overly impressed. And then anyone who watched the Chargers do what the Chargers do.
Great offense, horrendous defense.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing their head coach isn't a defensive guy. So anyway, Chiefs Lions was interesting. I think the other interesting one, we talked about it a little, Saints Titans.
Did we learn anything from this game at all?
I think we learned Ryan Tannehill might be done-ish.
I honestly was questioning during the game, should they just go ahead and throw one of those young guys out there? Because they're not. What are they gaining from Tannehill? Well,
that's why I was.
He threw 3 interceptions.
Yes, and it probably could have been 6.
And only had like 150 yards passing. That's what you want to keep in there? I mean, throw those guys out there. At worst, they duplicate what he just did.
Well, that's what I almost sent you the text because
at least then you know what those guys are.
I didn't know if you thought I was joking, but I think I started to become serious towards that second half. Like,
And the Saints were dropping interceptions
That's what I
too.
mean.
Like he definitely could have thrown 4 or 5.
it was 3. I think it could have been 6.
I saw a couple go right off the defender's hands, and I was like, "Oh, it was ugly."
And I wanted to be like, do we just put Willis in here?
Well,
This game
what I
is
wonder
right here.
is how long the stars on the Titans are going to be cool with Tannehill being the starter if
Yeah.
he continues to perform like
The
this.
quarterback play looked bad, and I thought the Saints, we don't know how both defenses could have been really good.
Yeah,
I think that's what was hard to gauge here. We know the Saints defense has good players on it. Titans defense looked pretty solid. That might have played a little bit
I am a
into it.
little annoyed. I text you about this. There was a clear fumble that they called an
Yeah.
incomplete pass that the Titans recovered, and they got it where they recovered it. But Byard was going to the end zone with that, and that pretty much changed the game right then and there.
Yeah.
Because if they get a touchdown there, they may be grabbing momentum. So I was a little disappointed in that, but sometimes that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Talk about the decision making at the end, which I think feeds into the quarterback play. I think that's why it confused me so much. Down 4, 4th and 12 or 3rd and 12, they get the probably 6 yards to make it about a 4th and 6.
But it was on like the what?
8 yards from the goal line.
Yeah.
10 yards from the goal line. I could see the end zone from the view, and just a weird coaching decision by Brable. You don't get much. Kicks a field goal to make it a 1-point game. They never get the ball back.
I mean, it's still a touchdown game if you go for it and don't get
And
it.
you have to get the stop.
Yeah.
Either way, you're having to get the stop. So
I mean, you got to go for the touchdown there. Everyone was scratching their heads on that decision. And they did actually a couple times almost get the ball back, and until they gave up a 50-yard bomb and the game was over. But it's just one of those decisions where you're a genius if you pull it off, or you're an idiot if you don't. And he did not pull it off, so I thought it was a stupid decision.
the thing that confused me, as we mentioned it, they hadn't really scored or driven down very much all game. So you're depending on a stop, no timeouts, all of a sudden this offense that hadn't basically done anything with a quarterback who hadn't done anything all game. They're like, with a minute 15, we're going to drive 45 yards, get us in field goal and kick it, though we haven't done that pretty much the whole game. Confusing decision. Not one Vrabel, not a coaching one I see Vrabel.
Normally, I like a lot of his coaching decisions. This was not one of them.
Yeah, it seemed weird, and it seemed just to make the score close. And in 8 weeks, we go, well, it was a 1-point game versus Saints. I think we already got that today from
We
one
did
of-
get it.
And I'm like, well, yes, but they kicked a meaningless field goal with 2 minutes left to just make the score closer. We're going to go into Bucks Vikings because I think I warned you about this
Well,
3 different days.
well, it's
that
funny.
week.
I thought the Vikings were going to handle this because I hate the Bucks. I think they're a terrible team this year, but the Vikings are exactly what they've been for like 3 years now. They went into halftime, and I'm pretty sure Cousins had like 320 yards
That's
passing
correct.
at halftime. I texted you. I was like, he's going to break the passing record in this game. He threw for about 30 yards in the second half.
Yep, and
Turnover,
and the turnover, then the turnover to pretty much seal up the game. I will say the Bucks didn't look
No.
atrocious. Defense looked okay. Baker was not. He wasn't the worst quarterback on the field. I'll say that.
He's another one that, can he stay healthy all year playing like that?
I don't know.
He was
but,
taking a lot of hits.
I mean, Evans. They still got some dudes.
Yeah.
And in a game like that versus the Vikings, which probably should just be the poster for Kirk Cousins, put up his numbers and every meaningful play in the game. Does not succeed, but every sort of meaningless play in the game certainly is worth a 30 or 40-yard pass. But, the Vikings are what they are. We'll see what the Bucks can do. They're certainly in a division where it's takeable.
My Falcons.
Yeah.
I like the Falcons.
Desmond Ritter was back there dropping 2-yard dives all over the place. They looked real confident in having him drop back and pass a lot. I think they threw, 15 times? 12? It was not very many. Dolphins-Chargers, probably the best game on the day.
Probably the most entertaining game.
Tyreek Hill was open a whole lot. I thought Tua was awesome throwing darts. Hill was awesome. Waddle was awesome. The Dolphins' offense looked awesome. Chargers' offense looked awesome in stretches and awful in stretches, and the Chargers' defense looked atrocious. Darwin James is really good. That's about all I can say good on the Chargers' defense.
Yeah, this game was back and forth, and it just seemed like every time the Chargers would jump ahead, Dolphins would close that lead instantly and go down and score again. And Tyreek Hill was just getting the ball at will.
Yeah.
He had to leave the game a couple times just to take a breather because he was running all over the place. But as soon as he came in, you knew where the ball was going, and he was getting it anyway.
Yeah, and if it wasn't him, it was Waddle, and if it wasn't him, it was Crockraft, and if it wasn't him, Mostert looked good too.
This might be the year the Dolphins win the AFC East.
I was going to ask. Now, it shifted a little bit. Now, we're going to go a little overvalued, undervalued after a couple of these blowouts. I don't think I put the Bills quite on that list yet from that game, but I liked the way the Dolphins looked, and then the way they closed that game where once they had that, they just sacked Herbert 3 straight times. Their defense doesn't have to be great.
Yeah.
It's just got to find a handful of plays. It's got to be a little like the Chiefs, where they got a couple guys on the defensive line to make a couple plays and just let that offense work. But
I just hope everybody stays healthy.
Yeah. If that offense stays healthy, it's going to light people up. We already talked rookie quarterbacks. Talked Jets a little bit. It was
very unfortunate.
Hell of a season. It was.
They're still a good team. I guess they're just going to have to roll the dice with Zach Wilson. I don't know if there's really any free agents you could bring in.
That would be better.
Than Zach Wilson. Not really. It's unfortunate. I feel for Jets fans. I really do.
I thought he was going to be. I think there's a chance Zach Wilson can play NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
Now, he's not going to be Aaron Rodgers.
But I mean, this team is still capable of being a playoff football team.
I think they can.
They've got a really good defense.
Yes. And if, you want to go into how the Jets have managed Zach Wilson in his years there, probably some problems there. But I think there's a quarterback in there somewhere. Ship him over to San Francisco and Brett Purdy in there. We might be telling different stories on how great one is and the other isn't. But we'll see where the Jets go. It maybe can sneak to that 9-10 win mark. That was important to grab that win there. Because it's sort of one they sort of stole because they didn't look great. Buffalo didn't look great either, but, Buffalo certainly looked like the better team once.
I was proud of the fight back from New England after that terrible start they had. They really ground their way back into being competitive in that game with the Eagles.
Did. But good win by the Eagles too.
Yeah.
I mean, go into New England and
on
win
Brady Day.
On Brady Day. All right. I didn't want to break down all the games this week, but I wanted to look at a couple of the sort of games that blowouts because. Probably the biggest overreaction like bettors make is from week 1 to week 2.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it. We see the Cowboys play. They went 40-0. Good win, defense, great. But also the first 8 minutes of that game, pretty much everything that could go wrong for the Giants went wrong, and everything that could go wrong for the Cowboys went right. And there were a couple others in there. So I'm curious what you make of these lines. We'll start out with the Bengals, who didn't even look like a professional football team over the weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe it was rain. Maybe it was Burrow. We both thought the Bengals would start a little slow, but that line looked bad. Their receivers.
That line's been bad for 3 years.
The receivers did not look great. Burrow did not look great. The defense, They
didn't look ready to play.
Yeah.
That's what. They looked like they were half asleep.
And they go
because Cleveland did not look good.
No, I was gonna say it wasn't like I thought Watson was out there dropping dimes all over the place.
Yeah.
If Burrow didn't look as bad as he did, I think we'd have some questions about Watson as well, because I thought he sort of looked like garbage as well. But they play the Ravens here. I mean, other Achilles blowout, Dobbins.
Gosh, that's sad. You know, I had him in my fantasy. I didn't have any top dog running backs, but I had a lot of good, decent ones, and he was one of them. He was having a good day, and then it was over.
Yeah, you feel bad for the Rodgers thing, but at least he's had a full career.
Well, and Dobbins hasn't got his contract yet.
Yeah, and
he was in the midst of a little bit of a holdout. I don't think he got paid.
He did not, and this ACL, now Achilles, he's been banged up basically since he got drafted. You wonder how long he's gonna last, and I mean, he's the reason why I understand why the football guys hold out, because basically this guy's career, it will be a long shot.
Well, my thing is
for him to get back and get a contract.
Organizations don't care about loyalty.
Yeah.
It's a business. They're looking out for them. The players got to look out for the players. I mean, they can't afford to, and it's just unfair because situations like this happen, and now he's probably not going to get paid.
Yeah.
And he's going to.
It might be a training camp invite to see if he can do anything, and once you're in that mode, your career's pretty much done unless.
So, yeah, if you're in a position to get paid, you need to make sure you get paid.
Yeah, and the Dobbins thing is a little sad because I think I definitely, when he got drafted by the Ravens, I was like, that's going to be a nice little, just a continuation of the Ravens.
He fits their offensive game plan very well.
Never hit. Injuries killed it. But Ravens, Bengals, do we get a better Bengals this week, or do we think that continues slow start here and the Ravens sort of catch another one here?
I think the Bengals are going to have to rally the troops and circle the wagons here because this is another divisional game.
Yeah.
And what we say is probably the tightest division in the NFL.
Well, we got the other one next, too, that we're going to talk about.
They need this win.
Yeah.
And the Bengals are talented. I think they rally, and I think they turn it around a little bit this week. I think there's some good value taking the Bengals.
You flip things, too. They haven't played, oddly enough, they have not played the Browns well in, 10 years. As bad as the Browns have been. They have played the Ravens well the last handful of years.
I'm also interested to see how well the Ravens play offensively, especially without Dobbins.
Yeah, we'll see what they have there.
I think
they lost two guys on the defensive side of the ball, too. Their other corner went out, so, things starting to get a little thin on that Ravens side of the defense, but we'll see what the Bengals look like. I'd probably stay away from the Bengals. I probably won't grab the Ravens, but I didn't like what I saw. I think I'm going to need to see the Bengals start to feel a little bit more smooth than just be real aggressive on him here in week 2. You got the flip-flop side of things on the Browns, who looked really, really good. Now this is usually when they go and look awful in a game. But I'm not sure you could look much more awful than the Steelers looked on Sunday. How much of that was the Niners, I don't know, but Pickett did not look like a very good quarterback. Defense did not look great. I read Hampton's going to be out. That's a huge miss in the middle of the Pittsburgh D. Continue on with Brown's life here, and the season of greatness is coming, or Steelers sort of button down the hatches here and come back better than they looked in week 1.
I was not impressed with the Browns win. So
I thought it had more to do with the Cincinnati being really, really bad. Because even though the score was big, if you watch that game, Browns did not run away with it until the last part of that fourth quarter.
And I think the 49ers just might be that good. Yeah. So I'm not reading as much into the Steelers' loss as you are. And Tomlin's such a great coach. I think they bounce back. I don't know if they get the win. I think this is going to be a very tightly contested game.
Yeah. I'm not going to overreact to the Steelers yet, but I need some improvement from Pickett this week.
Yeah. I was also disappointed. I've got Najee Harris in fantasy, and he didn't do a whole lot.
Now, I will say, the Browns' offense did not look. The Browns' defense looked
Yeah.
really, really good.
Well, they've had that for years.
I didn't want to totally crap on the Browns. The offense looked
Yeah.
porous, but the defense looked like a behemoth that could get on top of the quarterback. And if they get up like they did in that game, and that line can just start rushing the passer, your quarterback's going to be having a bad day. This one's interesting because it's a good. You can't look much better than the 49ers did. And I don't think we saw the receiver combination with the Rams popping out like it did. But I will say I thought Stafford looked healthy and capable of moving around and got the ball where it went. And there's still enough quality defenders on the Rams that they caused the Seahawks problems.
And he was finding Higbee. He was finding Puka.
Puka and Tutu. The combo of Puka and Tutu, the best wide receiver duo.
And they were open. They were finding a lot of space against Seattle. I was impressed. I really thought the Rams were going to come out weak and bad this year, and they really hung tough and looked like a playoff team.
Yeah, if Stafford can be that. Now, we got the reverse here, too. The Rams always play the Seahawks well. They never play the Niners well.
Yeah.
So, do the Niners keep this rolling, or do you expect Rams to stay sort of spunky here? I was impressed, especially that second half, with how well sort of Stafford moved in that pocket and got the ball to, their guys.
I think this is one I may eyeball the over. I think we're going to see a lot of points in this one.
Interesting. All right. Speaking of the team the Rams played, the Seahawks.
We were big on the Seahawks futures chances, and those seem to be fading fast.
Yeah, I'm not.
Geno did not look.
I'm not jumping off the Steelers bandwagon quite yet, but this one I probably opened the train door and staring at whether to do a little hop off here. Seahawks first half looked all right. That second half, I don't know what to make of it.
Didn't they just pay Geno a lot of money too?
It wasn't a ton.
It wasn't a ton. So, because they've got a ton of weapons.
Yes.
But he doesn't get them the ball very well. He did it last year, but it's really struggled.
I think that's the.
I mean, it's one game.
Yeah.
So, but at what point do the Seahawks look at their future and be like, maybe we just lose a lot this year? We get someone to slide in to play quarterback with all these weapons, and we get a fast turnaround.
Well, I think that's.
Because
is it Geno Smith of last year, or was that just one of those weird outlier years that in 40 years when we're old, and we're like, remember that year Geno Smith was good?
Yeah.
Because he was awful the next year, and I don't think they moved the ball 5 yards in that second half.
They looked fine in the first half.
Yeah.
And looked like they were in control of the game, and then just disappeared.
Yeah, but I was watching, I had all the games on. I was watching it first half. I was like, okay, this is normal Seahawks. That second half started, and I'm like, the Seahawks haven't moved the ball 2 yards in this second half. And I was like, the Rams are just, the Seahawks defense, this is why I jumped. Seahawks defense did not look great, especially in that second half. We make our jokes about Tutu and Pookie, but... that probably shouldn't be carving up your secondary, and the defense concerned me, and whether that was just a weird outlier from Geno last year and we get more what we're used to from Geno Smith. So not quite there. Lions this week, another tough game. This could be an 0-2 Seahawks.
Yeah, I think it will be.
Yeah, especially with the way that defense looked.
Yeah.
I need to see improvement. We might be
and the inconsistency on offense.
Yes. I might be off that we might be crossing off the Seahawks futures pretty quick here. The one who did look really good, Packers.
Yeah.
Jordan Love looked good, running game looked good, defense looked really, really good. Are we overreacting here? They play the Falcons, who I don't want to say looked good. They looked like the Falcons.
I mean, they did play the Bears.
Yes. The Falcons played the Panthers, so.
That is true.
I think this one's hard to predict because I don't think we think explosiveness out of the Falcons. I think we think they can run the ball really well and control the game. Packers, I think their defense is good. Is that a normal Jordan Love performance? Because I actually thought he's not a rookie quarterback, but he looked like a smart quarterback who got the ball where it needed to be, and he didn't even have Christian Watson in this game.
Yeah. They looked solid. This is going to be a fun one to watch. I don't know if I'll bet on this one or not.
I probably won't bet because it needs to be a wait and see. I'm a little angry I didn't do more on the Packers, and I got a little too freaked out. Now, granted, up into the point when I was making my bets, there might not have been a Dobbs too. And
he made a lot of their plays.
I became a little more concerned when it wasn't Watson and Dobbs going to be in there. But once it was Dobbs, I put a little bit on the Packers. Then the team the Packers played, the defense looked atrocious.
Yeah.
Justin Fields looked atrocious until the last 8 minutes of the game where magically fantasy numbers came. So Justin Fields is...
He's just not a passer.
A top fantasy quarterback still maintains, but I think this Bears team might be pretty bad. But that being said, I'm not real aggressive on taking the Bucks -3 here. That seems like a scary prospect.
Can we play the under 24 points in this game?
Yeah, this one is interesting. It's almost... I haven't talked myself into it. It's really early, but if you're giving me Bears plus, I might.
Do we think that highly of the Bucks now?
That's what I'm
just because they beat the Vikings.
I'm like, where do we get respect here? Because the Vikings basically threw that game away to them. I don't know. The
Vikings moved the ball at will that entire game and still lost because that's
correct.
what the Vikings do.
Correct.
But
a couple bad turnovers, a breakdown on a defensive play.
Fields might actually be able to play offense against the Bucks.
That's what I'm wondering. Can we get a little Bears here? And they aren't as bad as they looked versus the
Getting
Packers.
points is kind of nice.
That's where I'm at. But that one will be a very, very late decision. We call that the 12:58. Do I talk myself into the Bears versus the Bucks after what I saw from the Bears last week? I'm interested in that one because I don't know if I can live in the world where the Bucks are 2-0 either. So it's an interesting one. We're gonna go Giants here. We talked about it a little bit. Basically, everything that could go wrong did.
Can they have a snap and clear mentality and start their season over this week?
Do we wipe that away? Now, road 5.5 point favorites, always a little nerve-wracking, but, we didn't talk about the Washington football team playing the Cardinals.
They're the Commanders now.
Okay.
I think there's a petition out to become the Redskins again soon.
Yeah, that'll get put over. Both teams were bad in the Cardinals-Washington game. That was on the bottom corner. And
you can tell.
It did not get turned to other than watching Sam Howell give the Cardinals a handful of points, but the Cardinals not being able to do anything.
I also think that the Cardinals, they may have some players that want to be competitive, but I think the organization as a whole wants Caleb Williams. And I think they're going to try to lose games.
I think so as well.
I think this is a good chance for the Giants to get
That's
one
what
back.
I was going to...
I think it is.
Wipe it, go in, get one back, forget the Cowboy game ever happened. We'll see what it comes. I was not impressed with the Cardinals. Now, that being said, I was not impressed with Washington.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is we weren't exactly impressed with the Giants either.
Yes. So we'll see, but I think this is more their level of... They win these...
Yeah.
This is how they won games last year. They beat the teams they should have beaten. Cowboys looked as great as ever.
We're going to get a lot of Zach Wilson in primetime this year because they had all these games scheduled for Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, I know. The other thing is, if you had taken the early line on this on Sunday,
it
was Cowboys -3. So if you could have predicted the Aaron Rodgers injury, you could have had a nice little Sunday line of -3 Cowboys. It's 9.5 now.
Boy, that's disrespecting the Jets.
That's what I
like the Cowboys. I thought they played well defensively.
yeah. That's
Can their offense cover a 10-point
are we
spread?
thinking that because if you go and watch that game, the Cowboys offense legit didn't have to do anything.
Well, I mean, the defensive special teams combined with two touchdowns.
Yes.
And then 7 sacks
And got them the ball back a couple times on
their side of the field. I mean, they accounted for over half their points.
Yes.
If you look at the gaining possession
Yes.
on the Giants side of the
Correct.
field. So the offense didn't have to do anything.
Yeah. So that's what I was a little stunned. This was
And the Jets defense is still one of the best
9.5
in the country.
Now, yeah, they will probably cause havoc, and the Jets won't score much. But how much are we thinking the Cowboys are going to score here?
I don't know.
9.5 seemed like a lot.
That's the biggest spread this week.
A
Isn't
large jump. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
I think it's an odd. I wouldn't feel comfortable ever taking the Cowboys -9.5.
That's what I was living. Now, do I live in the world where I go Jets on the road here with season letdown? Maybe they can bounce back from that, but it's got to be a little head hanging in there. I mean, I think they probably had talked themselves that they could be Super Bowl contenders. I think now. You probably aren't Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah.
You can still get in the playoffs. Maybe make a little bit of a run, but
Maybe. AFC's going to be tough.
that's what I mean.
Playoff spots are going to be a premium in the AFC.
Correct. So I don't know, but you can at least talk yourself into that. You no longer can talk yourself probably into a championship level. All right, big week in soccer. Let's preview a couple of these I'm curious about. Let's start out in the Premier League. One I'm interested in because
This is a big. This is another one of those litmus test games.
I think it is because we've seen Villa. They played two sort of mediocre teams, played two solid teams. Got killed. They're pretty much out of center backs now. They're using center backs who probably should not be playing Premier League football. They play Crystal Palace, who is the epitome of the number 11 team.
Who did they just draw in match week 4? Palace.
Palace. Who was it?
It was 2-2.
Yeah. No, they won 3-2. It wasn't.
Oh yeah, because we took the line. It was was it Wolves?
Might have been Wolves. Wolves.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. Wolves.
Yeah, it was 3-2 versus Wolves.
Yeah. 3-2 Wolves. So Palace is not one of the teams that is ever going to be in the top 6, but they are also one of those teams that has enough talent that if you don't come in to play, they're going to beat you. I think Villa needs this game to at least top 4, probably done for now.
Yeah.
But
6-8.
there is a chance
area.
to climb back into the 6-8, get back into those European spots that they ended up finishing in last year. But I think this is one they really, really need. I'm going to be interested to see what that back line
I've already been kind of looking and got most of my soccer plays, and this one was too much of a toss-up for me to make any action on this one.
Yeah, I don't think I'll bet on this one, but it'll be one I put on the TV and definitely watch because I want to see what Villa looks like, especially at home, and if that back line can hang for. It's sort of what I look at for future bets when they play other teams that are a little bit better than them. If I can get good value there, this one I definitely going to have my eyes on.
Yeah, I've already got some plays on this one.
Man United Brighton should be a fun one. Probably two polar opposites of.
Well, you've got Brighton that's had really high highs and low lows. Although West Ham's turned out to be one of the best teams in the Premier League. And Man U has just been barely scraping by.
I'll say if you're ranking teams to watch play football, Brighton up here. Man U down here. It doesn't help that
this is in Man U, but I don't know.
The center back situation in Manchester United, it's probably going to be Maguire and Lindelof, which probably is not what they want. Anthony's not going to play.
I was really shocked at how much value Brighton was getting here. I think these are closely matched teams, and Brighton's getting, 3-1 on the three-way.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is coming off the international break, you probably shouldn't be real aggressive making your bets early because you want to see those lineups on who's in and out. Like someone like Matoma, who's been, playing for the Japanese national team. You probably want to make sure Matoma's in there because that's someone who will destroy that Man United back line and stuff like that. So that would be what I'd say international, coming off the international break. You probably don't want to grab it early. You want to make sure, someone like Brighton who doesn't have, 20 different guys to rotate in. You want to make sure they got their full lineup in, and we know Man United's not going to have their full lineup in. They got guys out and hurt, and just an interesting game. And I was, like you, a little shocked at the value that Brighton was getting. I know Man United hasn't lost much at home, but right now I think Brighton's a much better football team, especially from the start we've seen this season. Another interesting one. I don't know if it was good or bad that Newcastle got to the international break here.
They limped into that break.
Because they weren't playing good, but I feel like they all left with bad feelings, and everybody's coming back like, we need to get this ship right.
Well, their schedule's getting a little bit more favorable.
Brentford, always it's a little like Crystal Palace. It's one of those teams, if you don't take them serious, they're going to beat you. And I want to see Newcastle needs this win probably more than any Premier League team needs a win right here.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking potential coach's hot seat, season ending, just give up. They need to turn things around and turn things around quick.
Well, I think coaching-wise, talk yourself Man City, even though they were coming off a busy week. Talk yourself Liverpool lost. Even probably talk yourself Brighton, because you're like, Brighton's a good football team. But I think you add those three up, then you have a bad result here for Brentford. That's when I think things are like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
And, looking at what they have in Europe, it could possibly just start getting worse and worse.
Well, and they got like the most
spiraling,
and they got the most unlucky draw in Champions League, which is going to be a grueling grind, and that probably don't even make it out of the group the way they're playing now.
I wouldn't think so. Milan's in there, PSG, who early looked bad, but PSG, I probably put now in the top 4 contenders in Champions League, and Dortmund in there, who also not playing well, but
potential.
Dortmund has just as much talent as Newcastle, so it's just a really, really difficult group. Let's move to Italy. We didn't get to touch on this game totally, but Laszlo, I think I told you that week that they played Napoli, and Laszlo had been awful, and I was like, don't do Napoli this week. This is a stupid game. Laszlo goes in there and wins.
Yep.
They've been awful for 2 weeks and then beat Napoli. Juve, Laszlo, do we get good Laszlo here? Do we get good Juve here? Do you even bother to bet on this game?
I'm not touching it.
Or you just look and see which good we get?
I think if I had to lean, it's going to be Juventus.
Yeah.
Just because I trust them a little bit more. They're a little bit more consistent. But yeah, no play for me on that one.
I'm interested to see what this one is. It probably has 2-2 draw written all over it. But the big one, the Milan derby. Inter versus Milan. I'd say other than Napoli, Laszlo loss, excluded, have been the two best teams in Serie A. Inter and Milan both been playing really, really good football to start the year. This one I mentioned to you, I was a little concerned about Milan's Pulisic been on international duty. I know Leal's
He's been a big contributor this year.
Played all the games for Portugal. Giroud hasn't been quite as in on the France team, so he probably will get a start. But, I mean, if you don't have Pulisic, you don't have Leal. That makes me a little nervous on the Milan side of things. Inter, who I thought would have a bad start to the year, has really been lights out. And
I'm hoping
really good football.
I'm hoping we get some somewhat complete lineups here, just because I was looking, through first 3 weeks. I think
Yeah.
they've only played 3 weeks
I think
in
they're
Italy.
3 weeks in.
Both of these teams have 8 goals through 3 games, so I'm looking for goals. I've built myself a little pyramid on my plays here, but I just want to see a great matchup between two rivals teams that should be a great scene.
This is always a fun one to
Yeah.
watch too. Is the blue and the red split the stadium half and half?
Yeah, Inter's hosting this
Yeah.
one.
It's just a fun one to watch.
Yeah.
Let's move to Spain. There are actually a handful of Spain.
Yeah,
matchups.
I haven't completed all of my picks here, but I was shocked to see all the great matchups.
Yeah, it's probably the first week that I thought La Liga might have a little juice here. Valencia, who's gotten off to a pretty poor start, playing Atletico Madrid. I think Madrid needs this one because
they've been hot and cold.
yeah, watching Barcelona, watching Real. We both talked about it a little bit in our preseason show where we thought they might not be as strong. They've gotten their wins, but they haven't been as strong. And if Atletico could keep this going and beat teams like Valencia, they can be a contender here to maybe steal this La Liga title. But
I think I talked about it in futures. I think I had one on
Yeah.
on Atletico to be one of the winners.
yeah,
I think they're there, but
they can't have the game like they had at Bilbao, where they basically went in there to get a 0-0 draw.
Yeah.
You can't go into Valencia, who's not played well all year long, and go after a 0-0 draw. You have way more talent than them. Go in there, win this game 2-0, be done with it, get your 3 points, and put the pressure on Barcelona and Real Madrid to sort of have to keep up. Speaking of, Barcelona probably has their toughest game on the year so far. Real Betis, granted in Barcelona, but Betis, I thought, has gotten off to a pretty good start here. Barcelona, they've gotten their wins, but it either looks bad defensively and good offensively, or it looks good defensively and awful offensively. I don't know what we're getting, but I think Betis might be a little live here, especially coming off that international break. See what those Barcelona legs look like.
yeah, I think there's some potential for some exciting matchups, and maybe we start getting Madrid and Barcelona, they've been coasting.
Yeah.
Maybe they start to really feel the heat this week. Maybe they get surprised.
Yeah, I'm interested here. That being said, I think I've bet Sevilla like all 4 weeks. Sevilla has not won any of those 4 weeks. And then...
Well, this is the team that just moved up in Las Palmas, right?
But I told you, they've sort of been a little spunky. Much more spunky than I thought. But Sevilla needs to win this football game. They've just been bad. And I'm a little nervous that Las Palmas might come in. Because they haven't had any dudes on international break.
Well, and they look like a team that wants to stay in La Liga.
That's what
they're knocking somebody else down.
Yeah, I think they're ones that might stick around. I've been impressed with what they've done, so I'm very curious if Sevilla stays. This will be the one I take Las Palmas and Sevilla finally plays well.
Yeah.
But the one I'm really interested in, now granted, we've both been burned pretty good by Real Sociedad this year, but they are capable. They have talent, and Real Madrid, Benny's probably not going to play. They have a handful of the Brazilian guys on their roster, and a couple of the older midfielders might not be in the starting lineup. I'm guessing Jude will be in the starting lineup, which is basically the whole reason they've won any of the games they've won this year. But maybe Real Sociedad gets their game back on track here.
This feels like either a 1-0 Madrid, 2-1 Madrid, or a 1-1 draw. I don't know if I see Sociedad getting 2 goals here.
I don't think they get 2 goals, but I think that 1-1, I've been...
And that would be a win for
bit.
them.
Yeah.
They would love that.
And they get that draw, and maybe that sort of kickstart their season to where they start playing a little bit better.
But I haven't seen enough from Madrid, and you said with all these players out, I don't know if we'll see it this week either.
I'm curious what they're going to throw out there lineup-wise. They were already a little thin from the injuries. Mix in international break. I'm interested to see what they throw out there, and maybe Real Sociedad can take a little bit of an advantage here. Let's move to Germany here. There's one major matchup, and then there's Freiburg gotten off to a little bit of a slow start from last year, but...
so is Dortmund.
Dortmund probably more than a slow start. I don't think we expect all that much from Freiburg. But I think you asked the same question you asked from Newcastle. Was the international break good for them or bad for them?
Yeah.
Because they can't have feeling good, have gone to their, international teams. But maybe that was the break they needed to reset their heads, come back. This Freiburg team had a couple bad games in a row. Maybe Dortmund gets back on track here. I probably won't bet on it, Dortmund again for a couple weeks till I see something from them, because they've been 3 weeks now where I haven't seen one good thing. That game right before the international break where they got up 2-0 in 15 minutes versus, Dieseldorf, and then end up blowing that game 2-2, and honestly could have lost that game at home. I want to see something from Dortmund here. So interesting. The other one, Union Berlin versus Wolfsburg. Wolfsburg been playing pretty solid football.
I think I've been following Berlin pretty close. I think they're becoming my second favorite team in Bundesliga. They're going to be looking for a bounce back.
That's what I was,
because they had that tough loss to Leipzig right before the international break, and they were looking good. And I think they were competitive in that Leipzig game until that red card kind of put them away. So I think this could be a get right, and they may come out strong here and try to win this one.
I'm curious to see if Berlin can get back on track. This is one of those teams where
I think they're looking for a top 4.
You need to be focused in.
Yeah.
But if Berlin is focused in, I think they can win this game. And I want to see their response from that tough game versus Leipzig, because they were cruising up to that point, and then the offense wasn't flowing as nicely versus Leipzig. You mentioned the cheap red card, and then Leipzig just put them away after that. And then we got the big one.
Yep.
We've been talking about it on
probably the biggest match of the year, any soccer professionally.
So far, definitely. And Friday night, Friday night for them, Friday day for us. But Munich versus Leipzig, or Leverkusen, we've talked about it.
We've both been big on Leverkusen.
We've mentioned grab the futures now, because if Leverkusen wins in here, you're going to lose a whole lot of value, even if Munich goes on their streak.
Well, you could look at it this way: you get Leverkusen now, then your value is going to get better on Munich. You might find a middle in there.
That's where I think this game, it's not important for Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich could be down 10 points with 4 weeks to go, and you'd still half believe they're going to find a way to win it. But I think this game is so important for Leverkusen. If they can get this win with what they did in the second half last year, I think they go, we're actually real here. We aren't Dortmund. We aren't RB Leipzig.
They've put together a really talented
roster.
roster.
Here to make a run, and we're going to challenge you. I don't know if they need to win, but they need to go in there, play well, force Munich to have to play football.
We know the weapons Munich has, but I've watched this Leverkusen team closely. They've got 4 or 5 guys that you get them the ball, they can find you a goal. Yeah. And I've been really impressed. Yeah. They tend to leak a little defensively. But
it's been better than it certainly was at the start of last year.
So this could potentially be a shootout, or both these teams are scared to get aggressive at first. Starts out really slow, and then a big second half. But I'm excited to watch this one for sure.
I'm gonna watch this one. I probably will put some
There's
money
value on Leverkusen.
I think you grab it at least. I think that either draw no bet, or maybe it's not as good a value, but you do the double chance, grab the win with the tie and Leverkusen. Maybe put a little on that 3-way, see if you can get the full. Definitely, I would not do Leverkusen. If you're going to do the 3-way, do Leverkusen to win, both to score, because Munich never gets shut out, and Leverkusen probably not shutting out Munich. So your better value is to do Leverkusen.
Yeah,
to win,
I think the both to score is minus 280. Yeah. So Vegas thinks that's happening.
I think that one's definitely happening. Might just want to grab that.
Put 1,000 on it.
Yeah.
Make a little bit of cash.
Make a little cash. Cover all your.
I'd say there's a good chance that hits.
Yes, that one I think actually, big juice, but you're probably in good value actually at minus 280 with these two teams.
Yeah.
Because, I think we've watched Munich this year. The defense still a little sloppy. Leverkusen gives up goals, and Munich always finds a way to score.
One thing I don't want to see here, I would love to see no red cards.
Yeah.
I want to see a good, clean, competitive match here, and I don't want it to get down to the just, this happened, and it ruins the quality of the game.
I will say, maybe, early on, they've been enforcing
Wouldn't shock me
a
if there's
couple
some penalties.
new rules, and they've been throwing red cards out. I would maybe chill on that just a little bit in some of these games, because it ruins the betting in the game. Once you go down to, it changes the whole way both teams play. Once you're down to 10, you have to change your way to play. The other team changes their way to play. It's just not as fun. I want to see good football game here. And especially not something like a cheap one where a guy delays on a throw-in, you give him a yellow, then he makes a tackle, and it's like second yellow. We've gotten a handful of those in the Premier League, and it's like, all right, let's not change the game because the guy takes 5 seconds extra on the throw-in here. It's just annoying, but pumped up for this one on Friday. Start off the sort of week pretty big. Thursday.
Our first full week with all sports in action. We'll see if we can sleep and survive.
Oh, I probably won't. I never do all that much. We'll see what we got, though. Big week. All our picks coming. Be sure to like and subscribe and watch all our shows. Dynamite David will have his college and soccer picks probably out Thursday night, Friday morning. He'll have his, Thursday night NFL same game play for us. And he'll have his NFL picks. We'll probably do that Friday night, Saturday morning, somewhere in that window. My picks probably come out Friday night, Saturday, maybe even Sunday. We do a little bit more last minute sort of thinking there, but you'll get all our picks. So be sure to follow Greenlight Network on GLN TV on YouTube or wherever you download your podcast. That's our show, and we're out.
Stapleton Airport information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 5.
Just where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.